All right, so we'll get started with the roll call. Kathy Brosnan. I see you there, Kathy.
Here. I didn't want you to have to listen to the puppies.
The puppies have muted her.
Tom Bukovitz.
Here.
John Decker.
Present.
Sean Green.
Here.
Sandra Jones.
Here.
Michelle King.
Here.
Michael Keister.
Here.
Tom LeVay.
Present.
2 nights in a row, Tom. John Moran. Oh, John Moran's going to be late tonight. That's right, too.
Oh, yeah, he did say that the other day.
And Jim Stevens.
Here.
And then, again, I'd like to welcome our guests, Dr. Monica Henson and Carol Martin. I had the agenda up just a moment ago. We had agreed at this agenda to have the presentation of the school default budget, which I did email to everybody this afternoon. You all should have that at this point. Mr. Sousa will not be here. The second draft proposed budget discussion, based upon the school board meeting last night, they're continuing to make edits to that, that proposed budget. So it makes the most sense to postpone that meeting until the 17th, where they'll actually have pretty much their final recommended numbers for their budget. And then at that point, we can go through with them page by page for each budget item and to see what types of cuts they've made to come more in line with maybe some of our expectations from our discussion on Tuesday evening. Do I have that assumption correct, Monica?
Yes, yes, you do.
So tonight's focus will be on the default budget. And then I think on the 17th the 17th will focus on the second draft and then potentially a facilities presentation. But I think, again, we can talk about it as a committee. I think when we have more solidified information and it answers more questions rather than having information that's halfway there. So I would propose that we consider waiting until the 29th to have that meeting when we have actual final numbers rather than going through part of it and not knowing actually what those numbers are, but we can talk about that at a future meeting. Just a couple of items. I want to make sure that we can kind of fall in a little bit more order. Our meeting Tuesday felt like we're kind of going everywhere. So I asked Monica if tonight with the default budget and going forward with the budget presentations that we start on page 1 and then we move forward page by page so that if there are questions, we're not jumping from page to page in the budget. So I would like to make sure that we can focus on each page item numbers individually. And I'll ask that you raise your hand. I can actually see everybody. So if you just want to raise your hand if you have a question, I want to make sure that everybody's opinions and voices can be heard. So if you could raise your hand, I'll address you and let you know that you can address Monica or Carol or anybody else on the committee if you'd like to raise a concern. And if you're addressing a particular budget item, if you could please refer to the actual page number, the function and the object. That way there, we all know what you're talking about. Sometimes if you're just referring to the description of an item, people aren't on the same wavelength as you. So if we could make sure we focus on that. And then I also remind all the committee members that we have no authority to act alone. And what that means is not one committee member can demand information that's not decided by the committee by vote. So if you would like more information from the administration or from the school board, you'd need to make a motion to the committee to make that request. That motion would have to be seconded by somebody else. Then we could have discussion about what the request for the information would be, and then we could vote on whether that motion would pass by majority or quorum of the committee that's present. And then I would like to remind you this, I mean, the default budget is kind of the default budget. We'll have the discussion. But in the future, when we're looking at the town and the school budget, proposed budget, if there's a specific item that you would like to be decreased, the same process would have to go through where you actually make a motion. You can't make a demand of the administration to decrease an item. That has to come from the whole committee, which we would have to vote on. I'd like to present just, I know for some folks that aren't as familiar with the default budget, let me see, I had a slide. So this slide is from the budget presentation that we all attended, or those of us that did attend in September. But what the default budget is basically last year's approved budget with the same appropriations that were contained in that operating budget for the prior year, reduced and increased by debt service, any contracts or other obligations previously incurred or mandated by law, and reduced by any one-time expenditures contained in the operating budget, and by salaries and benefits of positions that have been eliminated in the proposed budget. So to clarify the salaries and benefits, and I believe when we went to this presentation, Steve Buckley clarified this piece, meaning that if there was an actual salaried position or a paid position that was in play but had not been filled in the prior year, that payroll would still be in play for the following year in the default budget. It just means that an additional position could not be added to the default budget. So with that, Monica, I will give you the floor with the default budget.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And y'all know that a superintendent can't come to a meeting without a little slideshow. So I do have an overview for you of the default budget. And it is brief, and it will just hit the high points before we start digging in page by page. So just give me a moment. PowerPoint takes its time when it's connected to Zoom. Here we go, from the beginning. Okay. The primary big ticket drivers are really no different in the default budget than they are in the proposed budget. But I did go in and take some percentages for you all. And I did some summaries of the salaries because I know that question came up on Tuesday night. And with some of us not having the Excel version, we couldn't quickly and easily pull those numbers, but I've been able to do that for you for tonight. But your two really big ticket items, again, are the collective bargaining agreement wage increases. The salaries and benefits for collective bargaining member staff comprise 45% of the total default budget. And your increased high school tuition costs in the aggregate comprise 32% of your default budget. And if you take a look at other drivers, we had talked about the transportation costs, and this is our combined regular and special ed transportation costs. Those constitute a little more than 6% of your total default budget. Your SAU assessment is a little more than 4%. So you can see where salaries and tuitions really do have a significant impact. We have a little more than $6.8 million in the default budget allocated for collective bargaining agreement salaries and benefits. And as I mentioned before, that's 45% of your total annual budget. And I have broken the totals down by general education classroom staff. This would include teachers and paraprofessionals. And then special education classroom staff, again, certified teachers and paraprofessionals. Other instructional staff, such as your librarian, your technology director. I consider an instructional staff member for a variety of reasons, particularly this year with the emphasis on digital learning. Your support services staff, which include your facilities, your food services, and then of course the administration. So this is what your breakdown looks like for those items. And again, your high school tuition is almost $5 million, and that is more than 30% of your total annual budget. And we talked last night about the tuition increase. The rates have increased anywhere from 3 to 5%. among the different high schools that we send our children to, but the total amount of tuition to be paid is increasing by 22%. And I took a look at your enrollment history in your Co-Brown Academy students versus Dover. And in the last couple of years, enrollment has begun to skew slightly higher towards Co-Brown as the high school of choice. And then I broke out your tuition. Co-Brown is almost $3 million, and then Dover and the other public high schools are close to $2 million. And for your grand finale, your default budget increase for fiscal 22, your total annual budget is $15 million and change. And that constitutes an aggregate increase of 1.47 million. And that is a 10.7% overall increase from fiscal 21. So that concludes my overview, and I would be glad to answer any questions about that, or we can dive right into the budget itself.
It would probably be a good idea to go into the budget unless anybody has any really good general questions.
I just
Not
have one.
not so much of a question, but it would be nice to be able to get these documents more than a couple hours before the meeting starts, so we actually have time to go over them. I work until 5:30, so I had an hour to eat dinner and look through a however many page document. I would appreciate it if you got these to the committee a little bit earlier.
And Tom, I take full responsibility for that. Monica had sent them this morning, but I did not have an opportunity to even get into my personal email until this afternoon.
Either way, I mean, I work all day, so
As do
still
I.
not very many hours. It would be nice to get them at least the day before, so we have a whole night to look over them.
And I understand, and I do apologize for the late arrival of documents. By way of explanation, not excuse, we're dealing right now with 4 annual budgets in the SAU, 3 school districts in the joint board. I have 1 business administrator, and he is only contracted for 3 days a week for 24 hours. And tonight's meeting is my 5th either school board or town board or budget work session in 48 hours. So we have been cranking out the documents as fast as we can get them. And I know it's frustrating, but we truly are working as hard and fast as we can. And we're serving 4 different boards right now simultaneously with everybody in the same budget cycle. So sorry.
Monica,
As a new guy on the committee, is this because of the switch to SB2, or is this just kind of the way it always is?
I heard this is the way it always is. I talked to people that have been on budget committee for many years, and they said that the school has a habit of turning in budgets at the very last minute, so there's not enough time to review it. So this is something I wanted to kind of put out there on the table to say, you know, you really got to get this stuff to us at least 24 hours before the meeting starts so that we have a night to look these things over. You can't just give it to us a few hours before the meeting and assume that we have a chance to go through a huge budget document.
That's a great point, but why don't we just get into it?
I just have one question, Monica.
Yes.
So the default budget has no changes in personnel in terms of the number of teachers and paras and whatnot?
No, there are no new positions added from last year.
Okay, thank you.
And I do want to address, there's certainly no intent. I can't speak for previous years. There's no intent here to try to delay delivery of documents to prevent people from having time to review them. It's simply just mathematical facts, the number of hours in a day, the number of boards being served, and 24-hour contracted weekly for a business administrator to be able to generate the items. I'm not sure how to get it done any faster without adding additional contracted hours, which is not in our budget.
And I'll also add that the pandemic, Tom, has actually helped this situation, believe it or not, because in prior years for both the town and the school, we'd arrive at 6:25 at the meeting and we'd be handed the documents for both the town and the school and be reviewing them during the meeting. So I'm not banking a pandemic, but it has definitely helped with both the administration for the school and the town to get us information before our meetings. So, and I know Dr. Henson, I had emailed, I can't remember her name, but from the SAU for the binders.
Mary. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So we're hoping to get those, Tom, at least a few days before that meeting on the 17th to arrange pickup for all that. So you'll have at least a couple of days to review that second draft of the budget.
Can we make a motion to request that the school and other town departments and stuff get us budget documents at least 24 hours before a meeting? I mean, it wouldn't be binding. It's not like a law or anything, but it would be nice to kind of formalize that we expect to have our documents that we're supposed to review 24 hours before we have our meeting. I think that's a reasonable request.
I think I'd prefer to, well, does anybody want to second Tom's motion? Then we can have a discussion.
I'll second it just for fun, but, okay.
Yeah, I really don't
So-
think it's that unreasonable to ask for documents that we're supposed to be reviewing 24 hours in advance so that we can review them. I mean,
Can I ask a
that's our
question?
job, right?
Can I ask a question in terms of the default budget? This is not a budget that was just put together, right? It's been available for probably quite some time.
The default budget was provided to the board and myself, I want to say 3 days ago. The board wanted to have time to review it in their meeting last night. And then I sent it on to Tim this morning.
So, Tom, I do agree it'd be fantastic to get information prior. I would, I think in this discussion, prefer to do it on a case-by-case basis if we're having a meeting and that we know that we need information from the town, the SAU, the school, or the school board, that at that point in time, we make a motion to make sure that they have it to us the Wednesday before. But I know, unfortunately, there's once a month where typically our budget committee meetings fall the night after a school board meeting. And that's where that 24-hour piece is going to be nearly impossible to get information from the school board.
Well, then they just need to discuss it at the prior school board meeting. Don't they meet multiple times a month?
But yeah, they do, Tom, but usually our prior budget committee meeting was before their next school board meeting. So it just kind of, and I'm not making excuses. I'm just being part of this process for the past few years and knowing all of their schedules. And that's typically what we have to do is look at what their calendar is and make sure that they have an opportunity at one of their school board meetings to review the information.
And I agree, we could take it on a case-by-case basis for things where we may need more time to review it, but I really don't think that 24 hours is really that much of an ask.
Well, it would be impossible, Tom, when you think about the fact that the school board meeting is at 6:30 p.m. and our meeting is 24 hours later. We wouldn't be able to get the information 24 hours in advance if their meeting doesn't end until 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
Well, they would just have to plan ahead or have a different meeting time. I mean, this is their job. They get paid to do this. They're not like us where we have a full-time job, that we have to do during the day. This is what the superintendent gets paid to do. So it's not really our problem how they get it to us, but I think it's reasonable to expect documents, in advance to give us time to review them.
That is 100% reasonable. And in the interest of fiscal responsibility, we are employing a part-time business administrator, and I am producing the documents as quickly as I can get them from him. So when we can meet that kind of a deadline, we certainly will. And if we can't, we can't. But it's not that anyone is shirking their duty or that people don't take their jobs seriously.
Okay, well, I've been told by 2 people that have been on budget committee for years that the school has a habit of turning documents in very, very last minute where there's not enough time to look through them. And I'm not necessarily saying that there's any motive behind it, but it's a long-term frustration that people have had, and it's frustrating to me when I get done with work and it's 5:30 and here's a multi-page document I have to review while I'm eating.
So, can I say something? I think we all agree that we would like the documents early, or whatever. Yes, I mean, that's, everybody can agree to that. I find that it's less important on these initial drafts, but as we go further in, it's more important to get that earlier. Yes, we deserve a few days. And I mean, whether it's a motion or not, I don't think it matters.
Yeah,
I think
it
it's
doesn't
a
matter.
respect thing. And I think the SAU will, it seems like Monica has made that commitment to go forward to do that for future documents.
That's great. And I just wanted to, I agree, this document wasn't that big, but yeah, as we move forward and we have more important things, I just want to cut this off now and make it known that, we do expect things with enough time to actually review them. We don't want, as Tim said, we don't want to walk into the meeting and be handed something that we haven't had any chance to read and be expected to vote on it or approve it, or even have a reasonable discussion on it.
I think that's what people were talking about, is having experienced in years prior. And that's not happening this year. And also, we are going to get the full binders. I'm not sure exactly what the date is, but he's going to send us an email, I believe, and we can pick them up in the Northwood District. And that will give us a good opportunity to really look through and see the detailed information that we need to have the discussions that we're going to be having. So I think you'll find that that will be very helpful.
Okay, well, since it doesn't have any teeth anyways, I'll just withdraw the motion, but just putting it out there that we do expect to get these documents, a reasonable amount of time before the meeting so that we can review them, especially when we start getting into the bigger documents that take longer to read and digest.
I just want to say that we do have a new leadership person now, and I think we owe it to her to give her an opportunity to hear what we have to say and to act on it. So, and not live in the past.
Yep.
Thank
Let's-
you. And we really, truly are. I want y'all to understand, we really, truly are doing the best we can with the limited resources that we have. There's no intention to wait until the last minute. And I hear this from all of the boards that they don't want to get things at the last minute. But by the same token, they don't want to hire a full-time business administrator either. And I don't have the accounting skills to be able to do 16 hours of additional work to be able to do it. I'm not able to produce the budget for you as far as the mechanical nuts and bolts of putting it together.
All right, so I withdrew the motion, so let's just get into this budget document then.
So do you want to start on page 1?
Okay. Yep. I'm going to screen share. I have the Excel. Is that okay, Tim, or do you want me to go to the PDF?
Either one is fine. I think they're both
The
the same.
object numbers are the same.
Okay, and the functions are there too?
Yeah, functions are the same as well.
Can you forward along the PDF? I mean, sorry, the Excel for that, Monica, please? Because we only got the
Yes,
PDF
I
file.
sent that to Tim. Y'all want me to send it to you now?
No, you can wait till later. That's
Okay.
fine. I'm not going to open it now. So,
Okay. Let's see. All right, so you all should be seeing the Excel.
Yep.
And I'm in page 1, and this is the teacher salaries.
So
Question
it's
for Monica.
Did-
Are all of those lines that we're looking at so far where there are increases
These are the majority of these, and they're marked in the notes. The majority of these are mandatory expenditures. So where you see an increase, it's due to a collective bargaining or other contractual agreement.
Is there,
And there are
so like-
actual contracts for those staff and personnel.
I'm sorry?
I say there are actual contracts for each of the personnel where there is an increase that we're reflecting in the default budget.
Yes, yes. These are members of the collective bargaining associations, the paraprofessionals, support staff, and the teacher associations.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
on
Agreement runs
the,
through 2023.
oh, that's good. On the health and dental insurance things, so what's the difference with these? Why are they broken out into two lines? And
the larger of the two, and I'm looking now at line 9 and 10 on the Excel on your screen. The larger of the two is relative to teaching staff. The smaller of the two is relative to paraprofessional. And oftentimes you see such a huge disparity here between the paraprofessional health and the teacher health. Oftentimes paraprofessionals are females who are married and have they're already covered under other group health insurance through their spouse.
I had a question about the health insurance, and this may seem at first a little off base, but do you know, or can anybody tell us if there's any kind of employee wellness plan offered to the staff, faculty and staff of the school?
Yes, the Health Trust is the umbrella organization, and they have a very comprehensive wellness program.
Because I do know that other school districts have seen huge savings in terms of lower premiums with healthier employees, obviously, which just makes sense. So it's a way for us long-term to save. But so you're saying that's already in place?
Yes, yes, that's something that we already participate in. We have shopped out the group insurances, and we're waiting for quotes. We've looked at what other districts are using, the companies that use. So we're waiting on a quote from School Care to compare it and see if we could save some money with them.
That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are the health insurance premiums known at this time? Have they been set up as a guaranteed not to exceed premium amount, or is that still?
We have received notice of the guaranteed maximums.
Okay.
I don't know if our actual billing is going to be equivalent to the maximum. It usually comes in a little bit lower.
Okay.
We had to wait for the guaranteed maximums before we could shop it out to other health insurance providers. We just got those last week.
Thank you.
All right, so y'all just tell me when you want to move on.
One last question, not necessarily about that, but so this stuff these are the collective bargaining wage increase stuff. At the school, is everyone required to be a part of this teachers union collective bargaining thing, or are we able to hire people that are not, or are teachers allowed to not join these unions, or are they forced into them?
No.
The situation in the majority of collective bargaining states is that it's considered what's called a closed shop. If a state is unionized and the district is unionized, then staff would either be required to join or pay what's called an agency fee. And the Supreme Court had decided that was because the bargaining for benefits on their behalf, regardless of whether they, so they either join or they pay an agency fee.
And when they either pay union dues or they pay this agency fee.
Right.
And they don't. So there's no right to work or anything.
No, this is
no way
not a
for us
right
to hire
work
people
state.
outside of it. Okay.
Yeah.
I believe that's by district because when I worked at Timberlane, non-members of the union did not have to pay a user fee.
There was a recent legal decision within the past year that looks like it's opened the door to changing that. So, but I'm not familiar enough district by district in New Hampshire to know if it is a district by district situation. But you know that in our SAU, there's a requirement to join.
If you're not a member, you don't get to vote on any kind of contract as well. So
Right.
So
What is
everything we're
section
looking
125 plan?
I'm sorry.
What was that, Michelle?
Section 125 plan. What is that?
I don't know.
Line 15 for 1500.
Yep, I don't know. I would have to ask my HR manager.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with section 125.
Okay.
I think it might be, Monica, I think it might be somebody who takes that money out of their account and puts it into a 405 or, you know, some sort of a savings account.
Yeah. I know that it's part of the cafeteria benefit plan, but I don't know exactly how it works.
I have one other question about the insurance. Is that based off an open enrollment that's already occurred, or is that projected for this upcoming year?
That's projected for the upcoming fiscal year.
So everything, all these lines that we're looking at right now, I can't tell what that very last one is, the repair thing. Repairs and maintenance, okay. So I was gonna, so all these should match the other budget, right?
Yes, I believe they should.
The
And I guess
adopted.
repairs, well, start basically up to line 25 anyway, because that's all
Yes,
staff related things.
right.
Okay. All right, so starting at repairs and maintenance, we have 350 there, but we don't know what that's for.
can we talk about line 28? Try to get a better understanding of that increase, 22.4%.
Mhm. There is, as I mentioned, there is a percentage increase in the rate of tuition, but there is also an increase in the number of students who are going to be high school aged. What we do is we look at the enrollment projection for 8th graders rising into the 9th grade, and then we exit out the current year seniors. And so that's how we come up with those numbers. So the increased total amount is not just the tuition rate increase, it's an increased number of children.
I thought I heard last night that there was a 3% increase.
There's a 3.9% increase at Co-Brown, and then the other public schools that we send to, which include Dover, it's anywhere from 3 to 5%.
Right, so the difference between the 22.4 and say roughly 5% would be the increase in students?
Yes.
I mean, it would have to be.
Yes.
I'll just add that our current 8th grade, which one of my children is in, and the current 7th grade are two of the largest in the entire school, the K-8 grade school. So you're going to see an increase next year as well, probably.
Do we have a net number between the seniors versus the 8th graders? There should be a basic difference.
I could get it. I could get it for you. I don't know it off the top of my head.
I think the binders will have the enrollment report, and that would have the breakdown.
We'll have an enrollment report at that time.
Okay.
Do total number of students that are being budgeted for high school this coming year, does that include 5 move-ins, did I hear last night?
Yes, yes, we're anticipating 5 new students.
We've pushed back on that several years in a row. And last year we did not include any move-ins, and we did not, we still had more in the tuition budget than was actually incurred. And I would suggest really strongly that the school board take another look at the necessity of budgeting for move-ins.
Michael, I think we did that last night at our school board meeting.
Yeah, yeah, we did talk about it.
Right. Well,
okay, so
and it definitely shouldn't be in the default.
Well, it isn't in the default, but in the regular budget,
Well,
we had it
it's-
budgeted.
It's currently in this number if it's 22.4% increase.
No, if you look
No.
on line 30, anticipated move-ins, we've got a percentage change of 0.
So where is
Okay.
that, where's that delta coming from then on that roughly 20% versus the 5% increase on that line item?
Right.
You're talking about line item 28.
Sorry, open
Yes.
up the, yeah.
Yes.
Because that
And
was
now-
the percentage that matched, what that showed the 5 move-ins.
So as the budget is refined, those also have to be indicated here on the default budget then as well. Apparently that just
Yes.
hasn't happened yet. Okay. Thank you.
All right, y'all want me to keep moving down?
Yep.
Okay. So we'll go down to, so you can see your regular education total programming is an 11.3% increase. And now we go into special education staffing.
Does anybody have
These
any,
are collective bargaining.
does anybody have any questions on anything above section or function 1200 on any of the other regular education items?
Yeah, I guess I'm just still not clear on where that difference is coming in on that line item of the, sorry, up above on the 25% versus the 5% overall tuition increase if the added students aren't included there, or the move-ins aren't included.
The move-ins aren't included, but there's more 7th graders going into high school than there were seniors going out. So we're paying tuition for more students. So that's the
Total. Okay,
primary
thanks.
driver for that.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll go back to 1200 now. So any questions about our special education staffing costs?
So line item 58, the para salaries elementary,
Yep.
that 29,107 is contractual increase of 5.3%.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, do they have a bargaining unit as well, the paras?
They do. They have their own separate bargaining unit.
Right. Okay.
And that's not necessarily a 5% across the board increase. That's because of the steps, right? People move from
Right.
different
There
steps.
there are step changes that alter salary tracks in addition to the contractual increases.
I think something that might be helpful for the committee is maybe at some point in the future, be able to break down how many staff members are on step or getting step increases, what that amount is, and then how many staff members that are at the top step that are only getting a cost of living raise, and to show those numbers separately so that the budget committee has a better understanding, because 5.3 looks high for the person that doesn't understand the step and track system. So that might be something to have available for people that have not been in education before.
Kathy, is that something that we usually put into the binder?
No, we usually put copies of the CBAs in the binder, but not the breakdown. But I'm taking notes on all of that.
Thank
so,
you.
Yeah,
thank you for
we
doing
can try to
that.
get that.
That would be helpful for people to understand.
We used to get that years ago, but that's changed in the last couple of years anyway.
Yeah.
Last year, we got a budget document that had a very extensive notes area. And I'm not seeing, even when I looked at the budget worksheet from last night, that wasn't there. Are you not using that software anymore?
I don't know what software was used last year. And I know there was a different business administrator last year. So it could be just the methods of the individuals putting the budget together just are different.
Yeah, it seems like whenever we get a good improvement to the system, that gets abandoned the next year, and we're back to doing without those kinds of helpful notes.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just added notes. Those are added notes that could be helpful. That's all. The breakdown between people on top step and people that are still getting step increases, what the numbers are. So I think anyways.
Okay. All right. And then this is also now going out of salaries and into extended school year items, supplies, and special education tuition for out of district placements, as well as support for the special education children that go into the high schools.
A minute ago, Carol, you were talking about the fact that the 7th and 8th grade class is larger. The current 7th and 8th grade class is larger, which is going to drive things for the next couple of years. What does that special ed population look like in those same grades? Do we know?
I don't think we usually get breakdowns of that. And even if it would be, you'd have to, I don't know, Monica, maybe you can explain better, but you don't necessarily incur these costs for every child who's a special education student.
Yeah.
So
I guess my bigger question. Yeah.
I guess you usually get in the binders the number of out of district placements, which is usually very small, but each one can be very expensive depending on where they're placed. So that should be in the binder.
That can change from year to year too. You could have a kid,
absolutely.
You could have a kid in district and he gets assigned out of district, or you could have somebody move into district that's brand new,
Yeah.
And that's what the reserve funds cover.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was saying the reserve funds exist in case there is an unexpected large increase.
Yeah. And the children are individually diagnosed, and the weights of the funding weights are adjusted based on the severity of the disability.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just curious, what's the breakdown between normal education students and special education students population-wise?
Kathy, do you know what percentage of Nottingham kids are special ed?
You're muted, Kathy.
I'm sorry. I think we have 63 students in Nottingham Elementary School, and I'm not sure the number of preschoolers.
So that's like 10% about?
It's less than 10%. I think it's like 8.5, something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Which is very low.
That is, I was going to say that's actually quite low compared compared to an average school.
It is quite low, Monica.
The New Hampshire statewide, I think, hovers around 12%.
I'm not sure that 63 encompasses our 504s.
What's a 504?
Other physical disabilities, is that what it is, Monica?
Mm-hmm. Section 504 is part of the Perkins Act, and it's similar in concept to special education, but it's funded differently, and it is generally for a more temporary type of situation, such as if you have a high school student who's driving a car and breaks their hand that they write with, you can create a Section 504 accommodation plan for that student to have a note taker, to have a recording device to be able to access the, note taking, that kind of thing. Oftentimes that's what Section 504 is used for.
Okay, thanks.
We do get a small federal reimbursement for it.
I have a question on 104. New equipment. All right, so that says new equipment, which to me sounds like last year it would have been a one-time expenditure and should not be in the default budget.
I think that might be something like replacing equipment, like a language board for a nonverbal child. They don't hold up very well. They get a fairly rough treatment, or some of the weighted vests, things like that. I think.
So are we not budgeting it correctly every other year? Because then it should be under replacement, which is 2 lines down.
I don't know. That was just a guess of mine. Okay.
I'm jotting it down to find out.
Replacement of equipment and
Right.
new equipment.
And that's
also a child that might need a weighted vest that didn't need a weighted vest last year, but that's going to be written into their IEP starting now.
Well, how would we even know? Because we're talking 2 years away. So wouldn't it automatically just fall into this year's budget and you would have to figure out how to pay for it anyway?
I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what that is for. That was just a guess.
Yeah, no, I understand, Kathy. That's why I was just asking, because anything that says new to me strikes out as saying that it should be a one-time expense.
Well, you see, it says new furniture, and that's a zip.
Yes.
Right. I agree.
So
that one's good. I like that one.
Yeah. So new equipment is.
I wrote it down to find out what it is.
Yeah, but we can find out.
I know that Nate put into the notes that has been reduced for one-time costs. There's a remaining.
We need to find out
there's a line that says replacement of equipment. So if it was replacing something that wears out, it would be under there.
Right.
Exactly. That was my point.
So yeah, from my understanding from what Mrs. Sousa had explained the other night, is new equipment is equipment that did not exist before. Replacing is something that did exist, like a desk with a new desk. But yeah, that's a good point, John, because the $1,000 amount, even the past 2 years, that expense has been below $1,000.
It could be a piece of equipment that, because of an IEP, and they didn't have the equipment to service the child, they had to put it in the budget this year. There's a lot of things that happen in special ed that change from year to year to year. So again, it depends on the population and what the IEP requires.
Yes.
Okay. So we're on to, I think Medicaid is probably pretty much self-explanatory, and we'll go into the 1,400 items.
did have a question on 5564,001, the special ed tuition for the preschool. Is that because they go to Northwood for preschool, right? We don't have a preschool.
That's correct.
Okay. But if we did get that new building and everything, we would have preschool at Nottingham?
Yes, that's the plan. We have a preschool committee that is working on that as we speak.
Sorry, and to that, how
We'd be able
many?
to do that for this year's budget. So that would not be taking place next year.
Yeah, no, I was just surprised that there was that many preschoolers. I was just kind of wondering.
Well, see, it's not that many necessarily preschoolers. I don't think we have $160,000 worth of preschoolers going there, but we have to share the costs with just Northwood now because Stratford is pulled out. So you have to have all that staff.
And they've already pulled out completely?
Yes. Next year, they will be totally gone.
They're already out of the preschool though this year.
Yes.
Yeah, they have already launched their own preschool program.
Well, that makes a lot
So
more
we're
sense.
splitting the costs 50-50 with Northwood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
the Northwood cost, is that both non-public and preschool?
Yes. And if we brought the preschool back to Nottingham, we could offer preschool to regularly learning students and have them pay a small tuition to help defray the cost of our preschool. And that's an asset that we don't have at this present time.
But just to be clear, that's just the 100. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the default.
Which line are we?
Yeah, we're looking at line 12, function 1200, object 5564. So that preschool item, that's just that $185,000, $853.85 is that's just the Northwood preschool. The line below that
Yes.
include Northwood preschool.
Yep.
That's elementary, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Those would be out of district, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
What is that tuition per student, or does it vary based on the
It
student's
varies
needs?
based on where this child is placed.
Okay.
How many out-of-district schools are we utilizing?
I'm not sure of the number. I think it might vary year to year. I'm sure Nate could tell us that right off the top of his head. We could ask him.
Okay, thanks. I was just wondering that because I have no idea. I know I worked in Maine for many years and I don't really know the special ed situation in New Hampshire. So I wondered who and where we used. Thank you.
We make a lot of use of the Stratford Learning Center. And we, of course, have our own alternative program in the SAU to try to retain kids. It's less expensive to educate them ourselves if we have the capability to address the disabilities.
So some of that preschool tuition is for PEP, for instance, in Oyster River, or is that only Northwood?
I don't think we send any children to Oyster River. It's only Northwood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of our preschoolers are with us. We do have elementary and high school students that are placed out of district. And I can tell you that we are experiencing, and this is a national phenomenon, it's not limited to New Hampshire, we're experiencing more special education diagnoses in younger children. So we will go on to the 1400 lines. And these are your co-curricular and athletics.
I just have a question, and I'm not suggesting that it shouldn't be there. But when you talk about athletic stipends and co-curricular salaries, are those contractual? You know what I'm
think
saying?
They are in the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
And the way I understand the rule on that is that if we hire a co-curricular sponsor or an athletic coach, then we are obligated to pay them the collectively bargained amount. But we are not obligated to offer that activity, if that makes sense. For example, this current year, we were not spending down a lot of these lines because of the pandemic and the pivot to remote and then to hybrid. You know, so we're not, like right now we're using the gym for the cafeteria, so we're not offering basketball. But we're redirecting those funds to supplementing the after hours instruction that is being offered in some of the grades and to cover some instructional things.
And Tom, just to be clear, when it comes to the default budget, those line items would move over in the same amount. They wouldn't be subject to the same increase that the other collective bargaining agreement for the teachers is. But they, just because it's a default budget, even though we're in the midst of a pandemic, they would still be in there.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
They're just a flat rate. They're not an increase. All right. And then we have summer school.
Sorry, with the referees and so forth, if you could scroll up. Was there any discussion about reducing that line item based on where things are at now and, you know, most sports not occurring?
Well, we're hopeful that we will be able to begin offering sports in the spring. I attended the Southeastern superintendent's meeting this morning, and there are several schools that are planning to offer that. Right now they're having intramural or no sports, but they are looking to try to get some spring sports going.
And are we obligated to have officials or referees through some athletic association or
Yes,
something?
if we play within the athletic association, then we are obligated to provide licensed officials.
And we're having a great difficulty acquiring them because they want more money than we're able to pay.
Yeah.
Can we get with other towns and just all play outside of whatever this governing body is? I mean, I don't know if we need a license for a soccer coach or something. Or an
No,
umpire.
it's not to be,
Not the
it's not to
coaches.
be a soccer coach. The referees have to belong to some sort, and umpires need, and officials, those people need to belong to something, just like a Boy Scout leader now needs to be certified so we don't have predators there, you know, we take care of us.
To answer your question, Tom, it is possible to do that. There are some political ramifications for that. It's not necessarily as big of a deal at the middle school level as it is in high school, because in high school you have students who are competing and in some cases looking to be on scholarship and that sort of thing, and to be part of the state athletic association sanctioned organizations is more prestigious. So that's that's part of what drives that.
Sure, but you're kind of getting away from the core educational mission when you start talking about athletic scholarships and licensing for umpires and things. I mean, we have a constitutional requirement to provide children with an adequate education. As you said, we're not required to provide, extracurricular activities and sports games and things like that. So if that's a potential thing that can save us money, if we're having difficulty finding umpires and things because they all want too much money because they have to pay for their licensing and whatnot, then maybe it's time to talk to some of the other towns who are, assuming that they're going through the same problems, that maybe it's best that schools just play together in a Seacoast New Hampshire League and not a national.
Well, there is, that's what it is. It's the Seacoast New Hampshire or the,
Sure, I just made
Northeast.
that up. I mean, we just make
Yeah.
up our own one where we don't have all this red tape that costs us all so much extra money.
That is a
well, but
that is a tough sell though to get
but when
a group of
also
students.
the school doesn't want to play that game because the liability, if you don't have people that are capable, quote unquote, of handling those kinds of things, you know, a couple of $1 million 2 or 3 times a year would send us right back to that $9,641 fast.
I agree, Kathy. It's a big can of worms. It would probably be smarter and more affordable for everybody if the school would get out of the business of doing the sports stuff and leaving it to private companies and organizations to do.
Well, we
That's
want
about-
well-rounded students.
I don't know what sports has to do with education and learning, but
Well,
it's not part of the constitutional mandate. We're getting in the weeds, so let's
Yeah, sorry. My
continue.
point was just that if we're not, I know we're looking to, playing sports in the future, just suggesting that, especially in this year where we've already, had to change so much, that might be a line item we can look to reducing. That's all.
And Monica, you said if we, in your little presentation, you said that if a position is eliminated in the proposed budget, that it can then be removed from the default budget.
I think that makes sense.
I don't think so.
I'm not sure what the rule is though.
Oh,
I think what you said was it was an
something like that.
eliminated position this year, then it wouldn't carry forward.
Correct.
If the position's already been eliminated, it wouldn't carry forward in that default.
Okay, I thought it said in the proposed budget, but either way.
No.
But, so does that mean, have these athletic positions, have they been eliminated because of the pandemic?
No.
I mean, have we laid off umpires and coaches and things?
We don't hire them.
We're not offering sports and drama and those type of things that involve congregating kids closer together. We're just not.
They're not
And so-
employees of the school. They're
Okay.
They're just contracted through a.
But we're
agency.
not paying them this year or right now?
No.
Right.
No.
Okay, so can they be removed from the default budget then?
No, they cannot.
They're,
Okay.
right,
So
they're
that's what I-
falling.
Just
Go ahead.
one thing to focus on, like that first slide I presented, the default budget, essentially what they do is they take all those line items and they shift them right over from the proposed budget from the prior year. It becomes the default budget. The only thing they adjust is one-time expenditures and then increases for non-contractual and non-collective bargaining agreement employees. Am I correct, Monica? And then any positions that have been eliminated in the prior year would also not be included in the default budget. But I think if we're getting in the weeds and trying to argue, whether or not we reduce some of these expenses because of the pandemic, that doesn't matter with the default budget.
I think you're correct, Tim. That's my understanding.
Right. It falls into that category of the position still exists, but was vacant.
Okay.
Well, I just want to throw out the comment that the default budget is what it is, but the proposed budget for next year, if we're not having winter sports or we're not going to have spring sports or whatever, we're not going to have winter sports probably for sure. And that's even at the high school level. So when you talk about the salaries and the coaching stipends and the officials and all that, those could be reduced based on whether you're going to have a season or not.
But that proposed budget, Tom, is for 2000, the fall of.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I keep thinking.
I do the same thing.
I keep thinking this year. I'm sorry.
You keep thinking next year is January, but next year is next September.
Yeah.
Oh.
I just hope next year passes by as quickly as you feel it does, Tom.
And I'm hoping next year that there will be no question as to whether, the only question as to whether we will have sports or anything else is whether we really want them or not whether we can safely have them. That's my hope.
Yes, I share that hope as well.
I agree with you.
All right.
All right.
Moving-
Well, I'm
moving on.
scrolling down.
So I just want to make sure. So does everybody understand that what we're looking at here, as far as when you're looking at these items that are in here, they're all from the budget that was proposed last year and passed. those
Yeah.
would be included in this budget. So we can't really argue whether or not it should be in there. The only thing you can argue is whether or not it actually exists as a one-time expense from last year that would not be included for this year.
Right. Okay. All right. So we are going to move down. And I wanted to share a fun fact with you all on the topic of athletics. You are employing one of the first women in metropolitan Atlanta to officiate boys varsity high school basketball back in the day, when you only had 2 referees on the floor for a high school basketball game. And I had knees without arthritis.
Congratulations.
Okay. So Kathy, you are more familiar than I with the concept of the Summer Institute. Could you explain that? I know that people will ask.
Can you back up a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. I
Okay.
didn't realize it was 2 lines.
Yeah.
Okay, the Summer Institute is what a couple of staff members decide on a project that they want to do with a group of students over the summer, and it's not the whole summer, it's a few weeks, and then they gather a group of children and they set on a learning experience, and then they have a culminating project that shows up at the end, and that's what the supplies would be for. And the $3,000 is for the stipend or the salary for the 2 or 3 teachers that run the Summer Institute.
How many kids do we usually have involved in that?
I think probably 15 or so.
That's what I would have said.
Mhm.
It's
Is this something
middle
where we
school
can,
mostly?
never mind.
Is it?
Yes, it's middle school students.
Like 5th and up, maybe 5th grade and up or 4th grade and up.
I think maybe even 6th grade and up. I'm
Yeah.
not sure,
I'm not sure either.
but I can get the particulars of that.
But it's not the summer school for kids who need additional.
No, it's
No,
different.
it's
different from
sort of
these.
an enrichment kind
Right.
of.
Okay. Then we have our guidance counseling lines. And our school
And they are-
nurse.
The guidance counselors are part of the collective bargaining agreement.
Yes.
What do we have,
As
2?
is the school nurse.
2 full-time.
Okay.
Mhm. And then we have our school nurse lines, and the nurse is also a member of the collective bargaining. And then we have our contracted services. And these are contracts outside of the employees that we contract with places such as Stratford Learning Center. And then contracted evaluations are when we have students who are referred or they are due for annual testing. And these are special education evaluations.
And teachers.
Yep. And then we have speech and language, physical therapy and occupational therapy. Those are sometimes called related services because they're related to special education and other issues that are diagnosed by licensed individuals. And then the next collection of line items that have to do with improvement of instruction. These involve coursework, trainings, workshops that are provided for the staff members. And they are the stipend item that you see in the first in line, function 2210, object 5110, subcategories 000, that is a mandatory expenditure in the collective bargaining.
That was my question, so I'm glad you preemptively answered it.
So is course reimbursement. That's a contractual obligation.
Yes.
Right, but it was the increase that kind of triggered me on that other one.
Yeah. And then we have our instruction and curriculum development. This is the cost associated with employing a full-time director of curriculum. Then we have the librarian. And both the curriculum director and the librarian are members of the union.
What happened to the library salary? Why did it go down?
New librarian.
Wow. Cost savings.
Yes.
And then we have our technology services, which is both the technology director and associated benefits, as well as the hardware and software costs.
Are the hardware costs going to be considered recurring for, for instance, for the following year, and how that would impact the default budget?
Mm-hmm. Hardware for students and staff, in terms of the devices, we are 1-to-1, and we've budgeted a annual replacement cost, because we do have a percentage rate annually of machines that are too old or too damaged and must be replaced. But I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Well, would that be the replacement equipment or the new equipment?
That's your, what I was just describing is your replacement of equipment.
Okay.
And what you were asking me about was a different line item?
The hardware one, that's the tech new, I guess it's tech new equipment. My question was, is that hardware?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that shows 0 in the
imagine
default.
it is, but I don't know.
Right. It shows 0 in the default column. So.
Yeah. And Chris will be able, when we present you the final, or as close as we can get it to final draft proposed budget, Chris would be able to give you the absolute specific nitty-gritty answers to that kind of question. I am a little bit removed from the day-to-day operating there in the building, so I may not be able to always give you exactly the answer.
I have a similar question on Object 5750, if that network software is a one-time purchase or if it's subscription based. I could see it remaining if it were subscription based, but if it's just software that's purchased, I would think it would fall under the one-time costs.
Yeah, I do believe that is a collection of subscriptions that we're using to be able to offer the digital learning, but I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be a substantial reduction in that, even as we transition back into full face-to-face, because we do employ a lot of our digital strategies in the face-to-face classroom, if that makes sense.
Yeah, understood. Thank you.
Okay.
Jim, that's a good point, I think, on line 243 for tech new equipment, because it's a perfect example of there was a one-time purchase last year of new equipment that cannot be included in the default budget, which is why that's 0
Correct.
in the default budget column.
If you go up 3 lines to internet access, I see an increase there. Is that because of the anticipated cost for the same level of service, or is there going to be an increase in bandwidth or whatever you need to to accommodate some new needs.
We have increased the bandwidth.
And why would that be an increase to the default budget then? I mean, isn't that kind of like purchasing something that that is more expensive this year than last year?
Well, I
Is it an
know
increase
that
It happened last year.
Zero-based?
Well, but what I believe is that was what was in our budget. And perhaps this is what we had to purchase this year to address the needs of our students.
Makes
Could
sense.
that be what it is? I'm not sure, but that's what
I know
thought
that
that was.
I know Glenn put a note that it's a cost related to contractual obligation. So I'm expecting that we had to increase what we are paying for our internet access when we increased our bandwidth.
Yeah, but the increasing of bandwidth is like purchasing a new thing. It wasn't the old contract, right? It wasn't like the contract specified this year it would go up to 20,000. It was, we need something else. So now it's 20,000. So I would agree with
That
Michael
was-
that it probably doesn't belong in here.
I
think
wrote
we
it down to
should
check
do
on
that.
it, but that was in the budget. I know there was a large increase in that last year to increase
Yes.
the bandwidth. So.
Right.
Because we
I'll
went
check
from
to see
the
when.
100 bandwidth to
Yeah.
300 bandwidth last year.
Well, I thought
Right,
that
but it
was
shows the
pandemic
adopted
stuff.
budget at 13,000.
No, it wasn't. It was prior to the pandemic.
It was before the pandemic. Yeah.
The move to $20,000 or the move to $13,000?
The move to 20, I believe.
Well, the 13,000 was the budgeted number, so you must have pulled money from something else.
Yeah.
Yes.
'Cause, yeah, the budget the prior year in 2019-20 was $5,000 for, the actual rather, was only $5,000 for internet access. And I think Mr. Sousa had mentioned this at our meeting on Tuesday, that they're kind of getting raked over the coals by our internet provider right now. So
Yes.
it sounded to me like they had signed a new agreement and it was more than what was budgeted, which was why they pulled it from another section.
Yes.
Right. So to me, what basically that kind of means is that the other item that it was pulled from should be reduced by that one-time fee because you didn't spend the money there.
Yeah.
Can
It's
we,
probably not in the default budget.
Yeah, the default's not based upon prior expenditures though. But if they entered into a new contract, that contract would have to be included in the budget. I mean, if we could ask, I guess, Chris and Nate about that, that would probably
Yeah.
make more sense.
I wrote it down.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Karen.
Okay. Anything else on technology? Okay. All right, then we go into the costs, the services being provided by the school board. We talked quite a bit about those last night. And then your district secretary, which my understanding is that Tim, a statutory thing that the town elects. There's an election for the.
Not for the school board secretary. That's not an elected role.
The clerk.
The clerk.
clerk's
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Clerk.
Okay. All right. Then you have your district treasurer, the cost of posting legal notices, your annual audit and financial compliance, your school board lawyer, and then your SAU district assessment. Your district assessment is increasing because although we have one of the three districts departing, we're now dividing them we're dividing the cost of services between two school systems instead of three. And we are reducing, I have proposed about a 10% reduction in SAU services, including staffing reductions that the joint board is considering, but it still results in a net increase both to Nottingham and Northwood.
So it's the SAU's serving 2 towns instead of 3.
Right.
But
Next
the costs
year,
are only
yes.
the costs are only going down 10%.
The reductions that I've put into the budget are down 10%.
Is there a reason it doesn't go down by like a third?
Yep. And actually what I did when I started working on the SAU budget was look at what is the total decrease in the annual budget based on the departure of Stratford. And it's actually a little bit less than a third. But then when we looked at reducing staffing costs, because most of our budget is made up in staffing, you still have to have a director of special education. You still have to have a director of preschool. We're able to recommend reduction in the number of payroll clerks. I have proposed an consolidation of some of the financial work being done and contracting that rather than having a couple of employees and associated salaries and benefits, eliminating a couple of other positions. I'm a little hesitant in a public meeting to go into real specifics in terms of personnel reductions that I'm recommending. The staff is aware that there is going to be a reduction in force.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're probably also aware Nottingham might be pulling out of the SAU. And just as a reminder, if we do vote to pull out of the SAU, when does that take effect if we do that?
That would be a year from July. And yes, and everybody is aware that Nottingham is going to propose to create their own SAU. I've made some other recommendations to the joint board that would offer further reduction that I don't think that they are, for a variety of reasons, that they are not in agreement that they need to reduce that far.
So if that takes effect a year from July, then that really wouldn't affect this budget, the proposed budget or the default budget, by more than a month or 2 anyways. So it's probably not worth thinking about.
Yeah, be zero impact on this budget.
Yeah.
One thing that needs to be kept in mind is that when we talk about sharing the costs with Northwood, there's a formula that actually benefits Northwood to a great extent. It's not a 50-50 share. We pay considerably more than 50% and they pay considerably less than 50% because of that formula.
Can you explain that formula quick?
I can't.
It's based on my understanding is that it's based on your assessed property value. Is that right, Carol? The apportionment.
50%. It's 50% assessed value and 50% ADM.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
what's ADM?
You have a higher ADM.
Yeah.
Average daily membership.
Yeah. I knew that.
Student population.
Basically enrollment.
Okay. Then the next set of line items is your cost of administration of your school building. And that is both staffing and equipment and services. That includes your principal, your assistant principal, your school secretaries, your front office staff.
Could you scroll up just a bit up into the principals?
Yep.
Thank you. So why are these mandatory increases?
They are part of the contract with the employee.
But you don't have a union, do you?
The administrators are not part, and the administrative support staff are not part of the union, but they do have contracts of employment.
Monica, I think you were checking. I think you were checking with the legal counsel on whether those increases should be included for the administrators. We raised that issue at the meeting last night.
Yeah, we've sent the question to the school board attorneys. Because we weren't sure, in looking at it last night, we weren't sure if those increases would become part of the default budget or not. So we better ask the
They're not
lawyers.
automatic increases like the CBA is.
Right.
Yeah, then I would think that it wouldn't. In older default budgets from when I was originally on the budget committee, they weren't included, but that was over 10 years ago. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember pushing back on a vice principal getting a raise in the default budget several years ago, and they withdrew that, but there could have been different contracts written between then and now. So whatever the attorneys tell you, I guess we need to go with.
Well, if I can just jump in, when we talk about contracts of administrators, those increases are based on an evaluation and are given by, and I think in this case, the superintendent. They are not an obligation. So
Right. They're recommended by the superintendent. They are given at the discretion of the school board.
right. So in terms of a default budget, I don't believe they should be in there because it's not a contractual obligation.
And you may very well be correct. And we're waiting on confirmation. I learned a long time ago, when in doubt, ask the lawyer.
Right.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Let's see. Then we go down to our maintenance of physical plant, which includes your facilities director, your custodians, all of their associated benefits. And the custodians, Kathy, aren't they members of the support staff union?
This was
She may have
the
stepped
support
away.
staff union. I
The-
thought we
I
only
think
had two.
there's-
The union
I thought-
that includes the paraprofessionals.
I would be surprised by
I
that.
don't think so.
Okay,
Yeah, I didn't think they were part of that,
okay.
but they could be.
I just have I have a question. How many staff members do we have in the custodials?
I don't know. I would have to ask Chris.
And the only reason I asked it, I'm a little surprised we actually have a facilities director salary when in many schools I've worked in, they had a head custodian that took care of and supervised all of the things that needed to be done around the school.
Yeah.
It was a smaller stipend, it was an increased stipend for doing that. But
Right. Most of the schools in this region have directors of facilities, and I can tell you that the Nottingham facilities director, although your custodial salaries are competitive with neighboring districts, your facilities director salary actually is quite low.
well, we had a director down at Timberlane, but it was for 4 elementary schools, a middle school, and for a high school. That was
Yeah.
his function. So
Yeah.
that's a lot bigger scope of work.
Yes. Okay, and then I know we talked last night about the rubbish removal. There had been a big increase proposed by the company, but what you're seeing here is what we paid last year.
Could we go back up? There was the line for the copier leasing and maintenance. I was looking over the proposed budget, and that's in there for 12,000 representing supply and maintenance agreements. Does that mean that it's tied to a contractual agreement where the amount is less for the maintenance? Should it
Yeah.
not? Should it be
What line are you
something
on?
less than
Let me
1550?
We
What
asked that yesterday.
Which line are you on, Tom?
It's right there at 303.
Okay. Yeah.
I believe there was discussion that price was going to be going down. It's lower in the proposed budget, and it says that there's agreements in place. So do we run with the old number, or do we use the number that the contract is going to be?
I believe you would be correct, Tom.
And then also at the 306, the printing, the actual printing, is that them separating out your contract? Because I know your contract, you pay per print and then you pay for the actual copier.
My guess is printing is probably like school reports and documents and things like that out of building printing services.
Yeah, that's separate from the use of the copier.
So then I guess that 1550 should be reduced to 12,000 then?
It should be reduced lower than that if this is the last year that you're on in maintenance. If you're going to be owning it, then you won't be paying for anything. You'll just be paying for the contracted services is different from the actual lease of the copier. And so that would be nice to see like what you're paying for that, because it's, if you're on your third year, I mean, it's only a 4-year contract, then it shouldn't be 15.5.
Okay.
Is it just, I'm jotting down which lines we're checking on. Is it just the 5442 line or is it another line?
Yeah,
I
5442.
lost you.
Yeah, and
Okay.
in Carol, in the proposed budget, it is 12,000, and Chris had mentioned exactly what Michelle had said, is that drops down for this year. And then Michelle, I think you said that next year would actually be, there wouldn't be no costs associated.
Right, it would be no cost, only a maintenance fee, because at that point we would own the copiers.
In 2022, 23. Not,
Right.
Yeah.
Not, you're right.
Okay. All right. And then we go from maintenance and grounds to transportation. And we break it out separately between special education and regular education, and athletic and field trips, and federal homeless.
Can I just add, I don't know if Tim wants to talk about this later, the regular elementary transportation and high school transportation contract is expiring in June. And so we need to form the transportation committee again to negotiate either a contract extension or at some point we'll need to go out to bid again. So these rates potentially could be negotiated down. I don't know that how successful we'll be in getting it down, but.
Has the transportation committee in the past looked at alternatives to local providers, various services that have come in? I was looking through, there were some, I guess they're similar to Uber, but specifically for schools and partnering with school districts, sort of alternates to traditional busing companies and so forth.
I was on the committee through budget committee that reviewed the current contract, and when we put that out to bid, I think there were only 2 bids for regular transportation, and then there's a separate contract for special education transportation. So I think when we put it out to bid, had nobody bid on it. I don't know, that would have been almost 3 years ago, so I don't know if those companies existed then. But when we put it out to bid again, we can see.
Thank you.
Karen, I found some paperwork from that meeting of the Transportation Committee that I'll share with you.
I don't know if I saw mine.
Carol,
and this, I did discover this current number is based on having 8 buses for the K-8 school. So that's one of the things we can look at, is whether to go down to 7.
Yes, well, we've also been paying them for the 8 buses, and then they're reimbursing us.
Right.
Yeah, we've been getting a credit in our monthly bill.
Carol, this is off topic from the the default budget, but when you form the transportation committee at the school board, are you anticipating having a representative from the budget committee like we have in the past?
Right, that's why I wasn't sure if
Yes.
Tim will bring it up later, but yes, we need somebody.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. So this number could go down for elementary and high school transportation. It wouldn't go up because it already has the proposed increase from Dale.
When will those meetings start, Carol?
As soon as we can get them started. So yeah, I can't say that we would have a final answer in 2 weeks, but we'll try. So I already got in touch, or Monica put me in touch with the representative from Dale.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think we have to put it out to bid.
Well, we don't for this. So the current contract allows for up to 2 years of extension.
Okay.
So we don't have to put it out to bid for next year. But that's part of what the board needs to decide.
Yep. Depends on how nice Dale is to us.
Right.
The transportation is 6.3% of our total budget,
Yep.
$950,000.
And can you remind me again how special ed transport almost doubled? Like the special ed transport elementary, 81% increase, what that was due to?
I think that's due to us not being able to ride share. If there are kids that might be in Northwood that are going to the same out of district placement that Nottingham special ed children would be going to, we can split the cost of that bus ride back and forth to wherever they're going. But when that ride share disappears, you have to pay the whole cost.
And it disappeared because of the pandemic?
It disappears for all sorts of different reasons. I'm not sure exactly.
We have seen an impact of the pandemic on some families choosing to keep their children at home. And that has cost us in special ed transport.
But how does that cost more if they choose to stay at home?
If the child in another district is not going to be riding, then we no longer have the ability to split the cost of that.
Oh, if someone else outside, okay.
We have to assume the full cost of the ride.
And it's not just Northwood, they shop it around to all
kinds of
Barrington,
different places,
Lee,
yeah.
Madbury, all the local towns, but you have to limit the length of the ride. They can't be on the bus for more than, I don't know what it is, an hour, hour and a half.
Yeah.
But we've done a lot of work. Nate works really hard
Nate
at
does,
ride sharing if possible,
Yeah.
but we've lost a lot of them in the last year.
Well, it might be time to make sure that parents know they can get a mileage reimbursement if they can figure out their own transportation.
Yep.
Okay. And so you have your school operations total is 10% increase, 0.8% increase. And then our food services is like a little mini company appended on to what we do. And you can see that there are some associated increases, and that's the same issue that we were discussing with the administrators, that we're checking to see whether those can be removed from the default budget. But your grand total comes out to a 10.7% increase over the previous year.
Did the school get a grant for food services and food and lunch and breakfast and stuff while the pandemic was going on, that we get free?
We are currently offering all students free breakfast and free lunch. It's not really free, but it is reimbursed by the United States Department of Agriculture. And that's been extended into spring.
Oh, it has been extended. Okay. So is that going to affect us in any way down here on lines like 3.6 or 3.7?
Well, it wouldn't, I don't think it would affect the default budget. I'm not
I
sure.
guess for the coming years. Okay.
So just to be clear on that, I think in that binder that we get, Michelle,
Yeah.
in a couple weeks, it'll have that revenue summary, and that grant will be on the revenue side. It's
Oh,
still going
perfect.
to be an expense, but it comes.
We'll just see that. Okay.
Yeah.
Just curious. Thank
Can
you.
can you go down to the bottom again?
Yep.
So the default is 15,251,509.
Yes.
The proposed for next year, oh, I'm missing the last page.
It was about 7.5 or 7 point something.
No,
It was
it's
a 7.6% increase.
right. So the proposed budget is 2.5%, no, almost 3% less than the default budget,
Yep.
which I'm shocked at.
Well, I think, Tom, I was shocked too when I was taking a look at it. And I think if you look back at the salary numbers and that retirement, it's nuts. I want to become a teacher and retire in 15, 20 years. But that retirement number is really what's driving some of those increases in the individual salary numbers. And then I also noticed there was a discrepancy. Well, I thought there was a discrepancy between the adopted budget of 13,974 for 2020-21 and what you have listed here for the adopted budget is 13,774. But then when I kind of compared it, it looks like you include the warrant articles for the capital reserve funding.
Yeah.
And then that $97,000 construction expense, which was a grant, I think, that we received.
Right.
So that's the reduction then that you see, because there's definitely a difference when you look at what the adopted budget is here and the adopted budget on the proposed budget.
Yes, and I haven't had time to read through what you read through, the second version of the proposed budget.
Oh, I haven't read through the second. I'm talking about the first one that was presented on Tuesday.
Okay, I'm starting to lose track of, I need to be looking at something to be able, it's a processing issue I have. If I'm talking about numbers, I have to have something in front of me.
I guess I'm just trying to clarify for the committee, Monica. I think I understand it when I looked through is that because the warrant articles are not part of the default budget.
Yep.
If you're looking at a discrepancy, that was a glaring discrepancy for me when I was comparing the two. It's almost $200,000 off, but it's because those warrant articles that were passed were not included in the
budget. Okay, that makes sense.
Right. The warrant articles should not be in the, are they showing up in this default budget? Okay, they should not be. Right.
They are not.
I was just, because I was confused at first, John, because I was like, why are we showing a different number for the actual budget for last year in the default? And I just wanted to clarify for the budget committee why that is.
Okay.
So is there sorry, I wasn't sure if I was on mute. Is there a synopsis of where the deltas are between this default budget and the 7.6% increase of the proposed budget as it currently sits? I know more work's being done there.
I would imagine that is something that our business administrator will provide before your meeting on the 17th to review the revised proposed budget.
So, never mind.
I just have a quick question on the last item, the technology subscription.
Yes.
Just curious what that actually is.
For the food services, I'm not sure.
Okay.
It may have to do with their system of managing payments. If you all, I haven't had it in your school, so I don't know if parents pay online.
Yeah, it's the My Meal Time.
Yeah, that's probably what that is.
Right.
Subscription.
Yep, that makes sense. I was just, it kind of just struck me as a little odd, and it's not a big price number, but I just wasn't sure what it was.
It's for schoollunch.com monthly, John. It's a great subscription. It's a great read.
Maybe that's where the recipes come from.
Right. So then I guess, does anybody else have any questions on for Monica or for Carol or for Kathy on the default budget? I know they're going to work on those list of items which I have listed as, our contractual services that are in there for the internet, the principal salaries, custodial salaries, as to whether or not those should actually involve increases, as well as the printer lease, whether that should be dropped down to a $12,000 amount that was in the proposed budget for next year.
Yep.
And then I'm assuming that we can expect to have this completed default budget to us. I think I had asked for next Monday, a week from Monday or a week from Tuesday, the binders would be ready for us to pick up. And again, I want to stress to the committee that I know the SAU office isn't open. After, is it close at 4 or 5, Monica? And the doors are locked, correct?
We keep the doors locked. We have a bell. You can ring the bell. And the office closes at 4.
Okay.
So 8 to 4.
So if anybody's unable to make it during that time frame, just let me know, and I'm sure we can arrange to get the binders and arrange a drop-off pickup. And then I'm hoping, in addition, Monica, if we're able to get electronic copies of, I don't think we need electronic copies. Those of you that have been on the committee before know how big this binder is. You do not want electric copies of everything that's in that binder.
Enormous.
But at least I think of the more important piece would be the default budget and the proposed budget, especially for that discussion on the 17th. If we have those, at that same time or possibly that Monday before, if they're being printed.
Mm-hmm. I think that's reasonable. I think we can manage that.
I would prefer to get a digital copy as well as the binder if possible, just because it allows us to search for particular words and keywords and that type of thing, and copy and paste numbers.
Yep, we can do that.
Yeah, I have a longer list, Tim, so when I'll send it to Monica and CCU so that you have the whole list.
Thank you. All right, well, if we have no more questions, thank you, Monica.
Well, I have not a question about, it's not about the default budget. It's in terms of, we're kind of awaiting the second draft of the proposed budget from them, right? And I would like to propose a kind of an alternate budget. So you said that your goal was to cut the budget some more and turn in one that was a 4% increase.
That is the figure that the board and I discussed when we had our work session on Monday.
Yeah, and I would like to propose that you also kind of look at giving us some option. So trying to turn in a proposed budget, you can still do that budget, but maybe look at, what other things can be cut and give us a budget that is a 1% budget reduction. So a 1% budget cut. I think a 1% budget cut shouldn't be that difficult, considering there's been an 8% year after year after year increase practically. So that's essentially taking spending back to where it was a few months ago. I think it would be nice if we had kind of 2 options that we could look at.
So Tom, you'd have to make a motion for that. That's not something you can just ask.
Sure. Okay. I would like to make a motion that we request, in addition to your budget targeting a 4% increase, that you also present us with an alternative proposed budget that is a 1% or better cut. That'll really give us an option to see what kind of cuts are possible, and it kind of forces you to evaluate things a little bit beyond a 4% increase, and gives us something to consider that we could give to the taxpayer and say, hey, it's a 1% budget cut, but at least the budget didn't go up, because people are tightening their belts all over. It's an economic crisis. I think the least we could do is give them the knowledge that we at least considered a 1% budget cut.
I'm confused. Are you asking them to come up with a 3%
No,
increase?
a 1% below last year's budget.
Below last year's budget?
Yeah, so they're proposing a target budget number of 4% increase in budget over last year, and I'm proposing that we ask for an alternative budget that is a 1% cut from last year's budget.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion.
I would like to suggest that it is not a realistic request, given that the bulk of the school budget is for contractual expenditures that we do not have control over. The town voted for the teachers' pay increases, and we're obligated to provide those. Just that alone blows you way out of the range of being able to offer a 1% cut for the entire budget.
I agree with Michael. That makes sense.
Well, I mean, yes, we're told that we can't change any of those, and that it says here 45% of the increases due to contractual pay increases that we have no control over. But as Monica said in our meeting on Tuesday, that it is possible to reduce these salary numbers through reduction in staffing. And I think that's something that's just not been considered at all. And so that's kind of, what I'm asking is you can continue to figure out what you can cut to produce a 4% tax increase or a 4% budget increase, sorry. But I'm just asking that you see what it would take to produce a 1% budget cut. And I don't think that it's unrealistic to cut a budget by 1%. If it has to come down to a staffing change, then that is something that I guess you would have to consider. Maybe it doesn't have to be a layoff. Maybe it could be something like we saw in this default budget here, where we saw with the librarian that they switched to a new librarian, and the number went down substantially there. So maybe there's some staff shuffling that can go on where people are swapped out or something. But I really don't think that we're asking too much with a 1% budget cut, especially considering the budget went up about 8% last year and the year before that. So we're really not, it's not like we're asking them to go back to the number that it was in the 1990s. We're asking them to go back to the number it was last year, and not even that. So I don't think it's unrealistic. And we're also not saying that that's the budget that we need. We're not saying that 4% tax increase, 4% budget increase is unacceptable. I'm proposing that you give us two budgets, and it doesn't even have to be a whole budget. You say, here's the budget that produces a 4% increase. And if you wanted to get it down to a 1% tax cut, this is what we would propose could get us that extra few percent off of the budget. So you say, a reduction in this staffing position, or we eliminate this line item. So you don't even need to give us an alternative budget. You just give us what would reduce it the additional, number of thousands of dollars to get it to a 1% tax or 1% budget reduction.
Well, is there such a thing as an early retirement incentive type of program? I mean, obviously there's such a thing, but is that anything that the department or that the district has done in the past?
I don't know if they've done it in the past. I've seen large districts in other states that will offer a buyout to veteran teachers, and they'll offer an incentive in order to get folks to retire who are at the top of the scale.
Problem is you need money in the current budget to pay the buyout.
Right. It's a big investment.
It saves you in the long term, but not the short term.
Yeah.
Those of us who work for the university system know. It's costing us university system millions of dollars.
But I think to Sean's point, if it's something that is maybe not in 1 year, you've got 4 teachers that you're buying out, it's maybe progressive. But I guess I disagree, Tom, with your approach of having 2 proposed budgets or 1 even half proposed budget of a decrease of 1%, in looking at the numbers and knowing that the portion of the budget that is not even can't be decreased, and then looking at the rest of the budget that represents maybe 37% of the total budget. You're eliminating not just positions. You're eliminating programming to students. You're eliminating schooling, and you're impacting the education for students. And the role of the administrators is to provide the education, is to help provide an environment for the students to learn and grow. And these students have been screwed for the past year. And the fact that next year in 2021 and 22, they could actually potentially go back to a somewhat normal situation, but to then go back to that normal situation and not have the programming that they were accustomed to 2 years ago. And I think personally, I think it's a waste of time for the administration to have to produce 2 budgets in the next week and a half. And I don't see what the benefit of this committee is to review potential cuts, or, I'm relying upon the administration and the school board to come to us with a budget, as we've asked, that is reduced from the 7.5% increase as much as possible. At the meeting on the 17th, I think this committee should then present to them or talk to them and ask them more questions about what they presented, what they have not cut, what they did cut. And at that point in time, we can make suggestions, make a motion for any additional cuts that we see fit. That's my opinion.
It would seem to me that of those kinds of cuts would come back to a discussion that we had earlier, which would eliminate most extracurricular things, most extracurricular sports, activities, whatever. But there was some discussion as to whether that was important. I want to go on record that physical education, emotional education, and that other kind of expressive education that you get in drama and those other kinds of social activities in the school are very much a part of education as much as arithmetic is. So I wouldn't want to see those line items cut at all.
I'd like to just also talk about that a little bit. I don't know of anybody that went to a school from K through 12 that didn't offer sports, didn't offer extracurricular, didn't offer theater, didn't offer all those things that keep kids motivated and keep kids in school getting educated. If you did go to a school like that, I feel bad for you. So to say that we should cut all those things, I am dead against that.
Well, we don't even know if that's what they would propose to cut the budget to get it to a 1% reduction. So I would just like to remind everybody that we are in an economic crisis, that many town residents have lost their jobs. There's still a lot of people that have unpaid property taxes and are in danger of losing their households.
Well, Todd,
it's been a really bad year. I'm almost finished. We've had a really bad year, and I think we owe it to the taxpayers to at least consider what kind of cuts would be necessary to have even a flat budget. But I would like to see, a nominal budget cut of 1%, just to say that we care about controlling spending, and that this year there will not be a $500 tax hike for everybody in town. And I'm not asking that we vote to approve these changes. I'm not asking that we vote to cut anything in particular. I'm asking that we vote for the school to present us with what they would choose to cut if they needed to reduce the budget a few tens of thousands further to get it to the point where it would be a 1% budget cut. I'm just asking that they present us not with a full second budget. They don't have to come up with 2 budgets, but come to us with, your new proposed budget, your second draft, and then also be prepared to tell us if we needed to cut this budget by another few percent to make it an actual 1% reduction over last year. What items would you cut? Where would you be able to trim that off? There has to be something. I mean, we get the excuse that everything is a contract, everything's a collective bargaining. You can't cut this, you can't cut that. There's nothing left to cut, but there is always something that can be done. And I'm just kind of curious what you would choose. What if it has to be a staffing change? What staffing change would you make? Someone mentioned, why is there a head custodian? Couldn't there be, or a management of custodian or something like that? There could be some changes like that. So I'm asking you to come to us with options. So don't just bring us a 4% budget increase. Bring us a 4% budget increase, sure, but then also say, if you did want to keep the budget flat or reduce the budget by 1% to give the taxpayers a little gift in a really terrible year, what would that be? So bring us just a little bit more information.
Tom, I just do want
That's asking a lot of work for people that isn't going to go anywhere.
Okay, but they're not, this is not a volunteer job for Monica. This is her job. This is her full-time job. This is what these people do. This is what we pay them as a town to do, is to go through these budgets and make these hard decisions and come up with these things. And then they bring them to us to evaluate. And so I'm asking for us to be given options. I don't want to just be given, well, here's your 4% budget increase. Great. Yes or no. I would like to see, here's your 4% budget increase. And here's, what we would have to cut to make it a 1% budget reduction. What do you think about that? I would like to be presented with some options that we could consider, not just here's your, inflated budget.
When we have that 4% budget, that's the point. We look at that, we get it, we study it, we look at it. That's the point to have that same discussion that we had all through the default budget, which there wasn't anything that we could really change because it's default. That's the point where we say, do we really need this, whatever? Right.
And that's when we say that, but I would like them to already have prepared for us, maybe a prioritized list of, look, if we do need to cut additional items, here is a list that the school board or the school administration or the superintendent recommends in order. These are cuts that we could make. So if you wanted to reduce this budget, cut this item, or maybe we could change the staffing around. So yes, I agree. They come to us with the 4% budget increase and we can go through and we can suggest changes and things, but I'm asking them to come to us with a list of things that they could change that way. Cause we might get that budget document 2 hours before that meeting. We might not even have time to go through and find out.
Tom, we already talked about that. We're getting that document at least Monday or Tuesday, number one.
I know.
Number two, I want to clarify, because you made this claim this summer about unpaid property taxes and people losing their homes. And John Moran and Chris Sterndale both came back and said that unpaid property tax bills are no higher as a percentage than they were in years past, number one. And number two, the town has never kicked anybody out of their home because of unpaid property taxes. I just want to clarify. I understand that we're in the midst of an economic downturn. I totally get it. And I understand that people are hurting. I'm hoping that 6 months from now, people are starting to get back to work and things are getting better for folks. But I just want to be clear that what you're stating as far as people not paying their bills and getting kicked out of their homes is it's just not happening. So you can't make claims like that. Number two, I just, again, want to focus on the fact of what Sandra said, is that I think we rely upon this administration and the school board to present to us a really a pared down budget to what they presented before, to ask them to reduce it by 1% and present two different budgets. In my opinion, again, I'd like to hear from the rest of the committee, other than you and I and Sandra, as far as what I just think it's a waste of time to present two different budgets.
Okay, well, just to address the points that you brought up, there are still, some large number of unpaid property tax bills, whether that's more or less than normal years, that's irrelevant. There's people that aren't able to pay their property taxes, myself included. Anyways, there's also this notion that John put out here that the town has never taken anyone's house away from them. Yet the town owns, a number of properties that they need to divest themselves in. And also that is, the ultimate threat is taking someone's house away from them. There's many steps towards that. It's a multi-year process. The threat is that your house will be taken away. In most cases, people, when they come into that sort of financial trouble and they're unable to pay their taxes, they get a tax lien, they end up selling their house, or they find other housing or something like that. So yes, the town did not come in and do a seizure and have the sheriff come in and kick them out of their house. But when someone has lost their house and, had to move into an apartment or something and sell their house because of their financial troubles, that is them losing their house because of property taxes. So let's not pretend that no one has ever lost their house due to property taxes and that, oh, Nottingham is so wonderful, we would never, take anyone's housing away from them. If you do not pay your property taxes, you will lose your house at gunpoint if necessary. Let's not kid ourselves about that. That's the way taxation works. So remember that when you're approving these budgets, all of that money is being stolen from people at gunpoint if necessary under the threat of losing their house. So
Okay,
just to put that out, we're
going to move on.
Can we call a question, please?
Michael, you raise your hand.
Yeah, I'd like to move the question.
Yeah, call a question,
second
please.
that.
Okay, so can we get a vote?
Can we just recap what we're voting on? I would like to just clarify that what we're voting on is that we are requesting that the school board or the school administration, when they bring us their draft budget, which they have said is going to be a target of a 4% budget increase, that they also provide us with supplemental information That is what items or changes would have to be made to make it a 1% budget cut.
Yep, that's what I understand it to be.
Yeah.
So,
So I'm just
Yay
asking
vote.
for supplemental information.
so can I get a yay vote on that?
Yay.
Tom?
Do you need to go down the roll, or how does that work?
Well, Jim and Catherine are the only two. So if you just want to say yay or yay, if we could, whoever says yay, Tom Bukowitz said yay.
Jim Stevens is a yay. I don't think it's an unreasonable request to have some additional information.
Can we get a roll call just to
Absolutely.
Yeah,
go
I'm
through since we
confused.
do it with everything else?
Yep. Kathy Brosnan, yay or nay?
She's muted.
Kathy, you're muted.
Kathy went home.
I didn't go home, Michael.
Okay. Oh, good.
Nay.
Tom Bukowitz,
Yay.
John Decker,
Opposed.
I'm opposed. Sean Green,
Opposed?
Sandra Jones,
No.
Michelle King,
Opposed.
Michael Keister,
Opposed.
Tom LeVay,
Opposed?
and Jim Stevens.
Yes.
So the motion fails.
Can I just ask a question, just out of curiosity? How many teachers or how many professionals do we have in the school,
Hang on, I'll have to look it up.
roughly?
I'm sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head.
The old format had those kind of things in the notes. It was great.
Well, I just want to say, some of this conversation has been very disturbing to me. And, you know, being a math guy and being a former finance guy and an accountant, if I took an average salary, including benefits, of $100,000 for a teacher, and I calculated it to get to Tom's minus 1%, which is around $1,300,000, 83 and some odd dollars there. And if I divided it by 100,000, you'd have to lay off around 19 teachers.
For a 1% budget cut?
No, to go from what you're suggesting, from where they are to all the way back to a -1.
So I would like to say that the motion did fail, Tom.
No, I know. I'm just making my point that, you know, we can make these suggestions and whatnot, but until you really know how many teachers are in the building and how many kids and what it does to the education system itself, and I guess if you're never taught in a school, you really don't have any idea of what it takes to educate a child. And I find it irresponsible for anyone to make a suggestion like that. So
1% budget cut would be about $138,000. So that would not be 19 people's salaries.
We have voted on it. I think it's time to end the discussion.
Yep.
It's a settled matter.
Sure.
Are there any other questions for Monica or Carol or Kathy? Okay. So again, look forward to getting those numbers from you, Monica. Again, if we can get them electronic on Monday, the 14th, and then we'll plan to pick up the binders starting hopefully Tuesday. If they're available earlier, I'm sure everybody would appreciate getting them earlier.
We may be able to get things to you earlier than that, but I think those deadlines are very reasonable, but I do think we can probably get it to you before that weekend.
Okay.
So what day is that they're supposed to be available? What date?
The physical binders should be available on, was that Tuesday, December 15th?
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I had the right week.
Yeah.
Monica, what is the physical address of the school district building in Northwood? I don't know where that is.
It's 123 Mountain Avenue.
Thanks. Okay.
It's just behind the Shell station.
It's not hiding. I can see it readily when I get there, right?
Yeah,
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
there's a big sign out.
Just
front.
south of the traffic light.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
If there's anybody that would like delivery of said document, give me a call. I'd be happy to truck it over to any place that it needs to go if you've got other requirements. Even Sandra. Especially Sandra.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you all. Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Hey, wait, whoa. Budget committee members, you still just
What?
stick around. So we
No.
don't have any more business on the
I know.
agenda. I am responsible for the notes. If I meant to mention on Tuesday evening, our secretary, Lorraine Petrini, her father passed away suddenly last week. So in case you haven't heard, and so she was unable to do the notes. So I am your valued secretary this week. So I've been taking notes, and we'll have those notes available via draft. And then Lorraine is going to present the final notes to the committee to be adjusted over the course of the next week or two. So we don't have meeting notes to vote on from Tuesday, but hopefully in the next week and a half.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Thank
Fair
you.
enough.
Yeah.
So do we need a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
I move that.
Just the transportation committee. I don't know if anyone's willing to volunteer.
Oh, I'm
but we
sorry.
need to,
I'm sorry, Carol.
we
Do
need
we
to
have anybody that would like to
convene one quickly.
volunteer for the transportation committee?
When are you meeting?
We don't have anything set, and right now I think it's just me. So I don't know that
No,
we'll be able to recruit.
I'm with
or
you,
Kathy.
Karen.
Okay, yeah, it's going to be small. We just we want to have input to try to negotiate with Dale on the contract extension. So it's not a huge time commitment.
No, I say, when are you meeting?
We don't have anything set yet. We can work around people's schedule.
All right, let me know.
So you're, Tom, just to be clear, you're volunteering to be on that committee?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll nominate Tom to be the budget committee representative to the transportation committee for the school.
And I'll second that.
All in favor? I'll go down the list. Kathy Brosnan,
Yes.
Tom Bukovitz,
Yes.
John Decker, you already
Yes.
made the motion. I say definitely. Sean Green,
Yes.
Sandra Jones?
Yes.
You motion. Michelle King,
Yes.
Michael Keister,
Yes.
Tom, you can abstain. Jim Moran. I'm sorry, Jim Stevens.
Yes.
Congratulations, Tom. You are now on the transportation committee.
I had stiff competition.
It was a
And
battle.
you mustered it all.
Carol, did you have anything else?
Oh, that's
Okay,
it.
sorry about that.
That's all right.
So do we have a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting?
We do.
All right, I'll second.
Kathy Brosnan, you in favor of closing down this meeting?
Yes, I think so.
Wonderful. Tom Bukovitz,
Yes.
John Digger,
Yes.
I say yes. Sean Green,
Yes.
Sandra, you made the motion. Michelle King,
Yes.
Michael Keister.
I'm going to abstain and sweep up the Zoom room.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Could you sanitize the tables too?
Absolutely.
Tom LeVay
Yes.
and Jim Stevens.
Yes.
Thank you. We will, I'll put out the agenda for next week's meeting, probably early next week. And I'm assuming that Chris Sterndale will have the information for that meeting by Monday or Tuesday of next week, I'm hoping. And I'll get that again in electronic form to all of you. And as soon as I get everything from Monica, I will get that to you in electronic format as well. And I will send the Excel worksheet, budget worksheet. If Monica did send it to me, I did not see it, but I will look tonight and I'll send that out to the committee as well.
Thank you.
Have a great night, everyone.